वे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं भङ्गं नङ्यते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारणं परमानन्दं माधवम्। जय नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण। Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for joining. So today we'll have a concluding session on learning to teach. So I'll share the PowerPoint. We'll do a quick recap of the three aspects of giving a class. So the first is intent, the second is content, and the third is present. Under intent, which basically deals with the consciousness of the speaker, we covered 5 subtopics that one considers this as a service to the audience and to Srila Prabhupada, that it is essentially not about me. The notion of true humility, making sure that we do not have any hidden agendas, and being aware that the most important aspect of ourselves when we give a class is a character. So the next is content, which was again 4 topics. One is to know the topic. Is to know the topic that we are going to present. The second is to know the audience and also understand the needs, the interests, the concerns of the audience. Third was context. So we talked about how there is an implicit shared context and there is an explicit context. It's important to know both of them, and also be aware that if we do not establish proper context, we risk the audience establishing their own context, which may cause them to misinterpret the whatever we are saying. Then we talked about realization, yatha shrutam, yatha mati, yatha gati, that we speak what we hear, we explain what we realize, and then we share what we practice. And so we be genuine in terms of our levels of realization. And then finally, we said honor the topic, which means that we present the class closely aligned to the topic. We don't hijack the class and steer it towards a different topic. So today we will be talking about the final aspect of giving the class, which is present. And this is divided essentially into 3 parts: before the class, during the class, and after the class. So present is kind of like a tip of the spear, that in a way it is the least important part of the whole exercise. And in a way it's the most important, because that's where the rubber hits the road. So present is where our intent and content are essentially used for the purpose that we want to, which is to move the audience to a better understanding of Krishna consciousness. However, present is really a very small part of the exercise. We had said that the consciousness is probably the most important part. Our understanding of the content and moving along those 5 points that we said. And present is essentially taking all the intent and the content and giving it to the audience. So it's one of those things that so like in a sphere, if the tip is not there, it will not serve the purpose of a sphere. However, just the tip in itself can do very little. It essentially is channeling all the force and all the energy behind from the rest of the sphere. Right? So that's why I said present is probably the least important, but in a way, it's also the most important. So we'll talk about now before the class. So one thing is that is our personal attire. Right. So first dress, then a dress. So I wanted to share a bit of a personal anecdote that so when we got initiated, um, uh, it's customary to try and give some dakshin to your spiritual master. So this was in Vrindavan one, and somebody said that you can present a nice dress to your Guru Maharaj. We said it's a great idea. And we went to Guru Maharaj and said, we'd like to give you a dress. And he said, okay. And I can at least, so this was the first time we were doing it. It was an experience, right? Because you have to get ahimsa silk. So we got that, and then he said it's too rough. So we found another shop where it was better. Then it had to be dyed. And then he said the color is not right, so it had to be dyed again. Then in terms of stitching, there was just one tailor, 5-finger tailor who could do it. And even then there was specific design. So by the time the whole thing was done, and to be honest with you, I was looking at it from like, sannyasi, renunciate, and there was so much of focus on the dress. But really speaking, from Guru Maharaj's perspective, it was a service to Prabhupada that every time he sits on the Vyasathan, Prabhupada said that my disciples should always look like gentlemen and gentle ladies. And in that mood of service, he presents himself as neat, as well dressed. When Guru Maharaj is living at our house, I know sometimes he has 3 classes in a day: the morning Bhagavatam class at the temple, afternoon home program, evening home program. And for each of them, he'll take a shower, he'll wear a new set of clothes. Even like we tell him that, this is probably going to be a small gathering, maybe half a dozen people, still, he goes for this. And the reason is that maybe the tip of the spear, but it at least opens the heart of the person that, they're going to, even before the speaker has spoken, if he comes in crumpled clothes or dirty clothes, the tilak is not straight, and there's just that sense of being unkept. Then all the everything that was said will then be taken in that context. So the other part is before a class, good to have a kirtan. So Prabhupada's formula was kirtan, class, kirtan, and prasadam. Right? He created as a delicious sandwich. And if you look at some of the YouTube videos in Prabhupada giving a class, his Jai Radha Madhav very, very intense. His eyes are closed, full expression, and you get a sense that how intensely he's praying to Krishna, that let me do my service to you. because the coming 30 minutes, he has the unique opportunity to open up the hearts of jivas to Krishna, right? An important service, a service that is dear to Krishna, and a service that is possible only by the empowerment of Krishna. Right? So it's a good idea to have Jai Radha Madhav. In cases where the presenter, like me, is not a very good kirtanier, can always ask somebody else to do it. Or I know some speakers who are not good singers, but they learn one particular tune, and they kind of master that tune, and that's the tune that they will that's the tune that they'll stick with. Okay, the other point is that good idea for us to internally get ready. So just like when pujaris they step on the altar, they say several prayers. Like one of them is Shri Guru Paramananda, Premananda, Phalaprada, Prajananda, Pradhananda, Sevyam, Anivajaya. So Anam Viprona Chanarpati Napi Vaishna Shudra. So there's some prayers that the pujaris say, just so that they're as they meditate on the words of the prayers, it opens up their heart to the service that they're going to do. So we may have different prayers that we can recite mentally, just so that we get ready for this important service that we are doing. Then one thing to understand is that whenever you give a class, you're on the Vyasasthan, you're representing Srila Vyasadeva, right? It may be a chair, it may be a cushion, it may be you may be just standing. But whenever you're giving a class, you at least in your mind you should understand that you're sitting on the Vyasasthan, you're representing Srila Vyasadeva, you're presenting the parampara, right? You're representing the parampara that goes all the way back to Krishna. So that gravity of the service that you're going to undertake should not crush you, but at the same time, it should be something that should heighten the mood of gravity that with which you're going to be doing this service. So some other things before the class, timing is important. Plan ahead, and not just what you're going to speak, but how long for the invocation, how long for the kirtan, how long for the class, how long for the discussion, and establish the length of the class based on that. There's nothing more like that from the audience perspective that you're kind of going full flow and speaking, and somebody says, time up, and then you just drop everything and say, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada ki jai," right? So the audience feels cheated that there were points that you wanted to make, and you didn't get the time to make it, and you didn't prepare well enough to fit it in the time that was allocated to you. Again, same point that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that people like Sutta Goswamis, Sukdev Goswami, Lord Brahma, when they're beginning to speak, they render prayer sometimes to their Gurudev, sometimes to Lord Vishnu. So their prayerful mood important, and also the focus of the prayer is that let me do this as a service to the Lord, right? It's not so much that let this class be the best class that the temple has had, or let me dazzle everybody in this class. The class is simply that you've given me a service, O Lord, may I able to do it to the best of my ability. Then do not over prepare. This is very important. That sometimes devotees that they kind of over prepare in the sense that they'll do the dry run, they'll go through the whole talk, maybe with their spouse, or maybe they'll do it in front of a mirror. Essentially, that takes away the spontaneity talk. It comes out as it'll come out as mechanical. And one of the things that you want to do is to take the audience on a journey with you. Like when you tell a story, then the alluring part of the story is that even the speaker is enthused. Even though they know that the speaker knows that how the story unfolds, but that enthusiasm is infectious. If you over prepare, then you kind of dull that. So during the class, this is actually presenting during the class. Start with a strong hook. So typically the audience will decide in the first few minutes what they're going to do for the rest of the hour. That are they going to be attentive to the class? Are they going to internally tune off? Are they going to pull out the phone and look at it? Are they going to look outside the window or step out? It's kind of like a roller coaster. Like once you're on the roller coaster, then you're for the ride. But the first few minutes, the audience decides, am I going to step on this ride or not? If they don't step on the ride, no matter if the ride later on, it's scenic, it's exciting, but they haven't stepped onto the ride, right? So they'll stay disconnected. So start with a strong hook that attracts the attention of the audience. So consider this as an example. So you start your class, and let's assume this is one of those there where you have where you can show slides to the audience. So you start off with some slide like this. What is this monkey doing to this lion cub? Like, is he taking him on the top of the cliff and getting ready to throw him down? Is he like you can see that the cub is scared. Is the monkey evil? Has he kidnapped the monkey? What exactly is going on? Right now, almost all the people in the audience will know that this is a scene from The Lion King, and this is Rafiki the monkey, and the son of Simba, and he's holding him up. And then after that, all the jungle animals they kind of bow down and respect, right? But this particular scene, it can be interpreted in so many ways, right? And then you show the next slide. What's going on over here? That there's so much of blood on the floor. Somebody's stomach is being eviscerated. What exactly is going on, right? And then your topic of the class is how to stop jumping to conclusions, right? So this thing will take you maybe 5 minutes, but by this time the audience have already stepped onto the ride, right? So those who have seen Lion King, they've already opined about what's going on in the scene. Those who know the past tale of Narsinghdev, they will understand that this is actually the most merciful form of the Lord, offering protection to the devotees. And then you say, well, so that's why it's important to look at the entire context before jumping to conclusion, and then your class begins. So you can design a hook in several ways. It has to be a little bit connected with the class, but does not have to be fully aligned to it, right? You can tell a contemporary incident, you can tell some interesting historical incident, a pastime, but something that as the audience is settling down, they kind of then say, okay, this is interesting, I need to hear. Right? Something that involves the audience also participating. And then the mood is that, okay, this is a class that will allow me to participate. And then you can use that hook to then present in the rest of the content. Then transitions are very important. So like I said, giving the lecture is like telling a story. You're inviting the listeners to go with you on a journey. So what you're presenting over there is not what you know, but you're presenting yourself. And so imagine you're actually going on a journey with somebody, So even if the person, if you have recollections of going with the tour guides, the better tour guides, they will not just point out the historical significance that this place is like this. They will add so much of color to it. Right? They will talk about how there was a couple from the village close by that actually married over here, and how they used to come there as a child, and that's what keeps the audience attracted. Just telling them that this was 5,000 years old and this and that, it's in one way, yes, that's what the tourists have come to hear, but that's not that will hold their their attention. So the transitions are so important that they're actually even more important than the content, right? So your content should be in such a way that, so you remember when you were children and somebody like our grandparents or parents were telling a story, then then it's like, if they're good storytellers, they will stop at key points, and then the child will say, what happened then, what happened then, right? And then they will tell something else, and then they'll stop at exactly a critical point, right? And then the children are again impatient. What happened then? What happened then? Right? So that's how the class is. That you articulate the content between this transition. Now the transitions have to be smooth, right? But essentially, what a transition does, it connects one kind of content with another kind of content, right? You're speaking about karma, you speak about gyan, and then you create a transition between karma and gyan. That many people, the ability to do the right thing with the conviction of why you're doing it is more important, right? And this conviction comes from knowledge, and that's where then you have transition from karma to gyan. Typically, you can make transitions in form of an anecdote, a story, or or just in terms of having created a sense of expectation and then stopping it and waiting for the audience to anticipate the next part of the lecture. So Radhanath Maharaj, I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have heard lectures for him. He's famous for these transitions. Like he'll be giving a lecture, and then he'll stop, and then he'll say, "Should I continue?" Right? And everybody will say, "Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol," and then he'll stop. One beat, two beat, three beat, and then he will continue, right? And then he will continue, and then again he will say, "Do you want me to continue?" Right? Now, um, I was once talking to a devotee. He was saying, for once I want to know, what will Maharaj do if the audience say, "No, Maharaj, we don't want you to continue." So it would be an interesting course the class would take, but of course that never ever happens. The audiences they're with bated breath, they're listening to Maharaj, and everybody knows that the should I continue is mostly rhetoric, but essentially Maharaj places them on transitions. Right? He places them on transitions to kind of stoke the eagerness of the audience. Eye contact. So this is one of the the challenges that a lot of speakers have. That where should I look at when I am speaking? Right? So one way is to, like, we all have experience with conversations. So one way is to just consider the class to be a conversation. So like when you're talking to a group of 4 or 5 friends, then we will not look at just one person, but we'll try and make our class inclusive. Look at one person for a few minutes, look at another person, go back to the first person, and it happens organically. So consider the lecture like a conversation, like sweep the room, look at one person, another person. Eye contacts are important. They signal trustworthiness. And if you give a class I once, I think the temple once, a speaker came and gave a class, and he gave the entire class looking at the deities. In a way, it was good. He was looking at the deities, but the audience, or at least I felt completely disconnected. Like, is this class actually meant for me or not? So, lack of eye contact in a more conventional sense, people say a person is not trustworthy, is shifty, right? So, eye contact is good in that way. In media training, they say you should look into a camera. That essentially is making eye contact with the virtual audience. So there are cases where people find it distracting to look at the faces of people. In that case, you can look at the back of the class. And so that way, the sense is that you're looking at everybody. Or you can pick a friendly place and look at it, but not just focus on the face, right? But you can turn back to the friendly place. There's always somebody in the audience who's enjoying your class, smiling at you. So you can go and look at them for sustenance and then look back. But having an inclusive glance is very important. Then your focus should be outward, right? It's not that you get your notes and read from the notes. That you should have your you should have your notes in your back pocket, but you should be essentially engaging the audience. Then create a conducive environment, right? So when you give a class, it's your class, right? Even if you have been invited to somebody else's house, when you're giving a class, you're the host at the time. So you're responsible to create a warm and a conducive environment, right? So if you're giving a class and people talk, then ask if you can join in. Or something that is humorous, or would you like to share what you're talking? Because if other people are talking, even if it doesn't bother you, it's going to bother other audience. They have come there to listen to you, and then they can't listen to you because 2, 3 people are they are having a sidebar. So it's not so much about you that I'm speaking, nobody else should speak. It's that there are these 20 people who have come to listen to this topic, and they're not able to because of the sidebar that's going on. This happens a lot in the temple or in home program. The child is crying, pause for some time. Let the situation get settled. So essentially, you own the responsibility of addressing any distractions that are impacting the audience. That's because like I said, it's your class. You're representing Vyasudev, right? You're sitting in his seat. They've all been invited to come to the audience of the Vyasthana. So you're the host over here. So, but in all this, is very important to never ever insult the audience. Never scold the audience, never scold the child. They're guests in your room. Right. So, like I said, regardless of whether you're in somebody else's house, never ever insult. Even if the audience is insulting you, never ever insult the audience. Just consider that the guest is like Krishna. Right? And always give them all respect, regardless of whether they like your class or not, whether they are asking good or bad questions, whether their body language is positive or negative. From your perspective, they are guests. Right? So always give them all respects. So when we come with that intention, the audience will also respond. When you give them respect, they will also give you respect. So like I said, never read from notes. You can keep a flashcard for the main points, or if you feel that you need help, you can keep the notes and tuck them somewhere in your pocket. In this case, you really want to refer to them, and the audience is always fine with that. You can say, "I made a point. I just need to refer to it." They'll respect you more for it. The fact that you took the time to prepare for it, but do not start a class with a sheet of paper in front of you and then keep reading and flipping the paper. Even the PowerPoints, in the lectures, the PowerPoints need to be very light. Maybe one picture and 1 or 2 points, but they're just to they're not so much for information, they're just to draw the attention of the audience. Right? In situations like this, which are more which are less of lectures and more of seminars, it's okay to use a little bit more dense PowerPoint. But in a Bhakti Vriksha setting, in a temple setting, the PowerPoints need to be just aesthetic. If you look at Rampal Maharaj, he's an expert in using PowerPoints, but most of his PowerPoints, they're just very, very nice pictures. Actually, he has a whole team of people that work on his PowerPoints, and they essentially create just very nice, aesthetic, pleasing pictures, and then he uses that as a bouncing point for whatever he has to speak upon. Filler praises. So this is something that we can probably get somebody else to give us feedback or record our lectures and listen to it. So essentially, what a filler praises is that in many of us, there's a disconnect between the speed of the brain and speech. So sometimes we speak faster than we are thinking. So at this time, we'll insert like phrases like, you know, I mean, or like, you know. So essentially, it is a way to catch up there. Then sometimes we are thinking much faster than we are speaking. So that's when we find ourselves mispronouncing, fumbling, making fluency mistakes. So we kind of run over the words. So if we kind of record our speech and listen back to it, and we see that there are a lot of filler words that are coming, then know that there is this problem in which that we are speaking a lot faster than we are thinking, and conversely also. So best is that we synchronize to the slower of the two. So if we are if our thinking is slower than our speaking, then we reduce the speed of our speaking. Right? We see that we are using filler words, then we speak more slowly, more deliberately, and because we are speaking slower, we are also synchronizing our speech with our brain. And or if we see that we are fumbling or skipping words, then mentally we deliberate more before we are speaking. So this is the way for us to slow our thinking down. And earlier on, it's something that we do more consciously. Later on, it becomes second nature to us. The use of filler phrases is we may not be aware of it, but audiences get very quickly aware of it. I was listening to one of the lectures by a devotee, very knowledgeable, and he puts quite a few videos on YouTube. But he has this characteristic that he'll go and personally, I have such a strong desire to listen to his classes, but after the fourth or fifth I'm like really, I'm really struggling to keep my attention. I was really hoping that there's a way that YouTube can filter out these fillers. So after some time, the fillers become actually grating. Yeah, I remember when I was doing the Bhakti Shastri teacher training course, and they had each of them they had asked us all to make a presentation, and one of the Matajis, she had this filler phrase that it is okay. And literally, she used it 2 or 3 times in every sentence. Krishna said this, it is okay, and then said this, it is okay, and etc. And when she heard back her own lecture, she was mortified. She said, I didn't even know that I won't listen to my own lectures, right? So it's always a good idea to record your lectures and listen and catch for these kinds of things. Humor. So humor is the great tool for teachers. Vajrayana Prabhu calls it edutainment. In his book, Art of Teaching, Bhurijan Prabhu says that laughing will make the audience open their mouths, and then you can put some bites of philosophy in their mouths. He's quoting another, he's quoting a comedian, but very, very relevant thing over here. But humor has to be used very carefully because more often than not, there is an offensive side of humor. So safe humor is that generally try and direct it towards yourself, or maybe towards your spouse, your ethnicity, your physiognomy, but not towards others. Right. So if you're an Indian, it's okay to make fun of Indians, not okay to make fun of Americans. Uh, one of the lectures that I was in, this was a Prabhupada disciple, and I was attending his lecture, and he was trying to, I guess, connect to, it was an entirely Indian audience. He was trying to connect to the Indian audience. And then he started off by saying, I went to this hotel and it was a Patel. And then the person said that there is, how many people here have a Camry? And 80% of the people raised their hands. And they said, no, the person's name is Patel. How many people are Patel and own a Camry? And all the 80% hands was still. So he was just trying to, I mean, it was obviously a made up story, but he was trying to just include some humor. And the fact was that he was American, right? So actually, Anuttama Prabhu then took the mic from him and said, Prabhu, it's not a good idea to make fun of other ethnicities. So then he took a step back and then he said, well, he has Jewish background. And he said, why do Jewish people have big noses? Because air is free, right? So he was kind of compensate for it. But the second joke went a lot easier than the first one, right? Because he was kind of, he was kind of making fun of, he was Jewish, he was making fun of Jewish people. So similarly, don't make fun of the audience. Don't make fun of a third person also there. Don't make fun of uh, like figures of respect. Like even if even if the person belongs to Christian tradition or something, don't make fun of them. Safest humor is that is directed towards yourself or things that are connected to you. And best humor is that which is neutral in the sense that it does not necessarily have an offensive side, and it transitions into a message. So many of the better speakers, they use humor as transitions. So this is an example of a story, right? That there was a person who was very, they were neighbors and they were always quarreling with one another. And then one other person started worshipping Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva came and said, you ask for any benediction, but there's one condition, that your neighbor will get twice of what you get. So then the person says to Lord Shiva, you take away one of my eyes. Right. So there's that sense of humor, but then it can transition into a message also, that the nature of envy or the nature of pettiness or something like that. So in a way, humor opens up, people while they're laughing at it, then you can transition into a more somber message. So we spoke about before the class, during the class, after the class. Questions are very, very important. Right? If you look at it, almost all the scriptures, they're constructed around questions and answers. In the Bhagavatam, Vidur, he asked a long list of questions. And I mean, the whole third and fourth canto of the Bhagavatam is essentially a conversation with Vidur and Maitra. And when Vidur is asking this question, he says that I have put all these questions in a view of knowing the pastimes of Hari. You are a friend of all, so kindly describe them for all those who have lost their vision. Right, and then Maitreya may ask, he does not really ask it, but he may ask that, why are you asking me so many questions? And Vidur then clarifies, saying, when all these questions are answered, I will have complete concentration on the Lord's service with indifference to everything else, and then I can attain him. Right. So Maitreya is indicating these questions are not out of idle curiosity, but out of a genuine desire to make progress. So that's how we see questions that are coming from the audience, that they're coming out of a genuine desire to make progress. They're a valuable tool in which you have presented some material. The people in the audience are now absorbing that material in their own contextual frame. Some of them are thinking that how do I use it to resolve my own internal dilemmas. Some of them are looking to see how can I use this going tomorrow onwards. And so the people who are asking those questions, they're doing a very, very valuable service. Right? They're contextualizing your presentation into a practical implementation perspective. Right? And everybody benefits by it. The one person who asked, he probably represents 10 other people who have a similar question but have not asked. And you'll always notice that it takes time for the first question to come, but then after that, the questions come much quicker, because generally it says you have to wait 9 seconds for the question to come. If there's no question in 9 seconds, then time for you to close the class there. So whether it takes 5 seconds or 9 seconds, but after the first question, you will see that the next question will come much quicker, because the first person has done this service, that he or she has taken their own practical challenges, aspirations, desires to make progress, taken the class that you have done, juxtaposed them, and then have come up with inquiries, and that's what the others will follow suit. Sorry. So always give sufficient time for questions. Like sometimes people think, what if there are no questions? So generally there'll be questions, but if there are no questions, between the two, between the option of taking the entire time to give a lecture and leaving time for questions, and if there is no question, ending the lecture early, the second option is always preferable, right? Because questions are that important. You don't want to leave them to chance. Yeah. And it's a good idea not to end up with saying, are there questions? I mean, are there questions makes it very, very, like, you ask questions and I will give you answers. And so it makes it very, very kind of unilateral. At the end of the lecture, the idea is that even if there are questions, they are going to lead to discussions. So you can say that any discussions, or does anybody like to share their thoughts? Or you can say, who would like to share their thoughts? Right? Generally, when you say any, it becomes a little personal thing, somebody else. But who would like to share their thoughts? It's more inclusive and inviting. It's more collaborative. So in terms of answering questions, very important to first thank the person and appreciate the question, and also to do it naturally. So I used to give a Bhagavad Gita class in one of those. There was this virtual japa groups. So the format they had was that they would come together, chant 16 rounds, and after that they would invite a speaker to speak for 30 minutes or so. and then the Q&A part of it. So they would invite me once in a while to come and speak, and sometimes I would just attend. But it was kind of interesting that the way they worked was that let's assume Rupa Raghunath asked me a question, and then the format was that that I would say, thank you very much, Rupa Raghunath Prabhu, for the question. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. And then I would repeat the question. And then if Karuna Avatar would ask me the question, I would say the same thing again. Thank you so much for the question, Karuna Avatar Prabhu. All glories to you. All glories to Prabhupada. So they had this like 30-second kind of a thing. And the first or second time it looked okay. But person, if he was asking two questions, then the second time the same thing would go again and again. And after that, it just looked like it was somebody was pushing a button. So, like I said, the audience they appreciate spontaneity. Nobody likes to be a product. So it's good to appreciate the people in question because they're doing a service to you and to everybody else, but do it naturally. I appreciate the question naturally, appreciate the person. Remember, it's a conversation, right? If you're talking to somebody and the person asks a question, it's very unlikely that you will do all glories to you, all glories to Prabhupada, thank you for the question, and Hare Krishna, etc. More likely than not to. So well, that's a great question, and maybe this is what I think about it, or that's a wonderful thought, right? It flows in more organically. A lot of time what happens is that when somebody is asking a question, we begin to formulate the answer while we are hearing the question. So when we do this, then we miss out on the valuable cues that we could get from the person who is speaking. Because very often the question is buried not just in what the person says, how the person says it. Many times they themselves will rephrase the question a couple of times before they end. All these are very important. Right? So question answer is not so much about providing more content to the person. Question answer is more so about getting to know the person who's asking the question. Do not interrupt the person asking the question. Sometimes people will ask long questions. Sometimes within the first few seconds, you know what the question is, but still give the person the time to end the question. The person has been sitting and listening to you patiently. Now it's his time. So you need to give him his time, right? So it's important, even if the person takes a little bit long, but give the person the courtesy of speaking the question out completely. Now, you will inevitably encounter somebody, I think humorously they're called people who suffer from mycotitis. Mycotitis is once they get the mic, they'll hold on to it tightly. And it's essentially their time in the spotlight. And some of them will basically give a mini class themselves. They'll quote shlokas or they'll talk about. So they'll hijack the class, but don't cut them off. What you can do is to, at some point, you can say, that's a very good point you're making, and just to add to what you're saying. And so that way, you're appearing to be collaborative, that you're agreeing with what the person is saying, you're taking that person's point further, and you're also getting the control of the mic. Right. So the important thing is that going back to the previous point, that when you're sitting on the Vyasthan, you're sitting in a position of power, authority, and the audience they kind of look up to you at that point. If you come across as a bully, then you will lose your connection with them. So even if a person is going on and on and on, and you insult the person that is there a question? Like, do you have a question? Or I think you've spoken enough. You will see that the energy of the room will change immediately. Now, those people sitting there, they may agree with you that this person is speaking on and on and on. But the moment that you come down heavy on that person, they will close ranks behind that person against you. So Srila Prabhupada had this unique gift that he would turn the energy of the room in his favor. Right? So there would be some people who would stand up, especially in this larger Pandal programs, and make this weird assertions that I am God or I see God. And when Prabhupada would say something humorous, like, please say a prayer for me when you see him next, or something like that. And the whole audience would laugh, but the energy would turn towards Prabhupada. That he would never, sometimes he did that, very rarely. There were times when he was heavy on the audience, but Prabhupada gave classes morning, afternoon, evening, so there were so many different scenarios. But in general, you see that how Prabhupada would would keep the energy of the class positive. Right? He would very rarely uh, uh, use his position to be overbearing. Also important to look beyond the question, and not just why the person is asking, but what the person is asking, but why is asking. And the same thing about context. Somebody somebody is asking a question about what does Krishna speak about respecting parents. Right? Now you can give what Krishna speaks about respecting parents, but you can look beyond it and see that in all likelihood that person is a parent, probably is having some challenges with children, and is trying to get some assurance there. So maybe the more appropriate thing for him, for the answer for him, is that spirituality creates a culture of love and respect, and everybody loves and respects one another. And so it's making that distinction between wants and needs. So just a bit of an acronym that the speaker should give the best answers. So best meaning B is for the benefit of the inquirer and the audience. E is experience. So this we have spoken about, that yatha mati, based on one's personal realization. S is self-practice. Yatha gati, right? When you give an answer and you say that, yes, there are times when I have challenges in chanting, and this is what I do, right? So it's a powerful way to answer. And yatha shrutam, there are many things that are beyond the scope of our mati and gati, but we have heard. Maybe we don't realize that we are not the body and the soul, but we have heard from Bhagavad Gita. That's what we are, right? So we keep the answers honest that way, and give concise honest, right? Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that the essence of eloquence is brevity. So there's no harm in taking a few seconds to formulate the answer. Generally, the person asking the question, the audience like it, that they understand that you're giving it, treating it with proper gravity. And then the nature of the speaker's is that if you do not know the answer, you will tend to ramble, right? And many times then that time is what is used to formulate the answer. So you start speaking something that is tangentially related to the question, and then use that time to figure out what the answer is, and then come to the answer. So better to take a few seconds, pause, think about the answer, and give the answer. Humility is important in giving answer. That probably this is what I've heard, or this is what I've understood, or from the practices that I have done, my limited experience, this is what it is. It's good to develop a strategy for handling questions that are irrelevant, disrespectful, or intimidating. Different speakers have different strategies in terms of handling it. Some of them ignore the question. I remember in our Bhakti Vriksha once, there was a lady, um, um, and to some extent it was my fault. So I'd given a class and I was quoting Srila Prabhupada, where Srila Prabhupada says that this Birla Mandir is, it's really an homage to himself. He's calling it Birla Mandir. I mean, he's creating a temple for himself. So I was just sharing that Prabhupada said. And there was a lady who was coming to the program, and she happened to be a big fan of Birla or Birla Mandir. So the next week she came, she had prepared a whole bunch of stuff, that how the Birla Mandir are rightly called Lakshmi Narayan Mandir, and the people call it Birla Mandir, etc. And she spoke for like 5 minutes or so. I just heard her out and I said, "Thank you so much for sharing this." And I moved on to the rest of it, And there was, there were some. It so happened in that class there were some Prabhupada disciples also had come, and then they were like, I really like the way you handled the question. I was wondering, is this going to be a polemic discussion after this? Are you guys going to duke it out? But we respectfully listened to her and then thanked her, but you didn't give any light to what she was saying. So maybe she did not change, but at least the audience appreciated it. But different. There's no one brush for everything. Different scenarios have different techniques, and over time, as you speak, you will develop your own personal style. And remember your Brahmastra. As I said, one of the most powerful tools in the arsenal of the speaker is saying, "I do not know. I do not know, but what do you think? I do not know, but what does the audience think?" Somebody comes and attacks you up front, making it like a him versus you, then it's a good idea to diffuse that tension and say, "Well, let's hear what somebody else says." I'm not sure I can answer all your questions, and let's see what somebody else say, or I'll get back to you, or just say, "I'm sorry, I don't know." Always end the class with obeisances to the devotees, because knowingly or unknowingly, uh, there's an opportunity that of service you have gotten. You may have offended some devotee. It's good to get the prayers. It's good to get their blessings. So, like in the Tulsi prayers, we say Seva Adhikaro Dio Koro Nijadasi, right? We pray to Tulsi Devi that give us an opportunity to serve Radha Krishna. Similarly, when the audience has come, they've given you an opportunity to do Krishna Katha, right? So uh, it's a service that comes with the blessings. It comes with the blessings of Krishna through the parampara, and Krishna is giving you a very valuable opportunity to touch the heart of the of so many other aspiring devotees. So that mood of gratitude should be there, and uh, so generally, like in a bhakti Vriksha, we always, before we start, as part of the Mangalacharan, we do Vancha Kalpatarubhyash. When we end the class, we do Vancha Kalpatarubhyash. So there is this mood of gratitude. Thank you for coming and listening to the class, and thank you for having listened to me. And please forgive me if I made any mistakes. So generally, and this is more of an overriding principle, Srila Prabhupada would quote from this: Satyam Bruhat Priyam Bruhat Ma Bruhat Satyam Apriyam Priyam Janarutam Na Bruhat Esha Dharma Sanatana. Right. So Satyam Bruhat Priyam Bruhat. Speak the truth if you can speak it palatably, if you can speak it sweetly. Ma Bruhat Satyam Apriyam. If you're not able to speak it sweetly, then there is no need to speak the truth. Then priyam cha nanatam cha priyam. But that does not mean that just for the sake of speaking sweetly, you speak things that are not truthful. And Esha Dharma Sanatana. That this is the eternal principle. So sometimes answering questions, person says something. I remember I was giving a class in Baltimore, and one person, sat down to the class, and then he basically raises his hand and he says, "But ultimately we are all God, right?" right? And I was, I was sitting there, and the congregation over there, people said Mayavadi, Mayavadi. They started saying, and that person was really confused. He didn't know that they are appreciating him or criticizing him, but he just sensed the energy was very negative. Now the guy, it was the first time coming to the temple, and that's what his conception. That's what his conception was. But you come down heavy on him and saying that you're a rascal and you think you're God, etc. It's not going to help him. Yeah. But at the same time, just for the sake of placating him, doesn't mean that you say, yeah, it's true that everybody is, that you're God and everybody is God. So that's a balance that the speakers used to need to make. Self-evaluation is very important. After a class, note down any realizations. So class is like doing spiritual service for the pleasure of Krishna, and he may speak through you or he may speak through the audience. So make a note of what went well and what did not. And this is something that will really, really, really help you as you give more classes. Keep a small diary for your classes, and or you can attach it. If you prepare your notes for the class, at the end of the notes, you attach what went well, what did not, and that's the way that you can continue to improve. You should also realize that you're not obligated to give a new class every time, right? If you're speaking on the same topic at more than one places, give the same class. And don't worry if the same people are over there; they'll also enjoy it. Right. So the class is, the Srila Prabhupada, if you look at it, he gave a very consistent message in his classes. Right? You're not the body, you're the soul, Krishna is God, so Krishna. Very, very consistent messages he would give, and same people over and over again. So don't feel pressured that I spoke on this topic last year, now I have to speak again. So let me create a new class for that. Questions is a very potent way to see how your class went. Like questions, now you give a class on spirituality, and a person says, "What about happiness?" Then, right? And then you realize that maybe your class was too much focused on material misery and not so much on happiness. And you give a class on bhakti, and somebody asks you that, is bhakti only for Krishna, right? And then you realize that you haven't spent enough time establishing the position of Krishna. So reading between the lines and the questions, you will get an understanding of what did you cover well and what you did not cover well. So quickly putting everything together, come well prepared for the class, dress well, start with a prayer. Remember that it's all about the audience. Begin with a hook. Recognize that you will never be able to speak everything about the topic. Pick one theme and stay with it. Make the content light and airy. Manage the transitions. Don't speak too long. Ideal class should be 30 minutes, at the most 40 minutes. Keep sufficient time for questions. And with a prayer, do a 360 after every prayer. So in concluding, I want to share that even though we have looked at many technical aspects, the essence is very simple. We know something about Krishna, and we want to share it with others. Like one of the examples is that Srila Prabhupada was at the airport, and he saw there were devotees distributing books, and Malati Mataji's daughter, Saraswati, she was, I think, 4 or 5 years old, and she goes up to one person and says, "You know who's Krishna?" And the person says, "No." And she said, "Krishna is God." And Prabhupada said, "Just see, she's a child and she is preaching," right? So that's what it is. All these tools and techniques, they're there to make the service better. But we should never lose sight of the underlying principle that we are simply telling others about Krishna. Then important to develop a mood of service and gratitude. This is most important. We should tell ourselves before, during, and after the class that here are devotees who are listening to Krishna Katha. They are giving me a chance to plant the seed of bhakti in their heart. The audience is doing me a big favor out of kindness of their heart. They have given you an opportunity to speak and serve them. Right? So you can write your own prayer and you can read it before the class, after the class, and that will make sure that you're grounded. Every person is unique, right? So every class that you give is your class. Now it's okay to take content from other people. Most of the classes I give, I steal content from others. I listen on YouTube. I take content from Prabhupada's purport. I steal their ideas. I steal their jokes. But at the end of the day, you have to make it your class. Right? During the early days of ISKCON, right after Prabhupada left, they were and this continued for a while because I started going to the temple in the mid-90s, and I noticed that myself that there were some Prabhupada disciples, they were Americans, but they would speak English with a Bengali accent. And I would worry why this. I would like wonder why they speak with a Bengali accent. They're like Americans, but uh, they were like, they had started copying Prabhupada's way of speaking, his mannerisms, the way he held his hand, etc. And then after some time, I was too new to know that what they were doing, but it just looked a little weird to me. And after some time, it just didn't sustain itself. So do not copy other people's classes. You can take the content, you can take the mood, you can get it from more than one place, but make it your class, right? It should represent you. So the last thing I want to leave you with this is this statement from Narad Muni to Srila Vyasadeva, the instructions to Vyasadeva. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratim shlokam abhidavatyapi namanyanantasya yasho nikitaniyat shanvati gayanti grananti sadhava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental verse directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Right. So this is our shelter. That we don't have to give the class with the most with the perfect content and transitions and everything perfectly. It'll be good if you do that, but we have to give a class that gets one a little bit closer to Krishna, right? And then because of that, even though it may be imperfectly composed, they are still considered to be perfect. Okay, so quick recap. 3 aspects were given the class: intent, content, present. We just spoke about this. Content, before, after, during. We talked about how presentation is like the tip of the spear. And this brings me to the end of the discussion, and looking forward to hearing from you what your thoughts are. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the beautiful class and presentation. Really, really helpful. So, Prabhu, I had a question about, there was a part when you said, I think the bullet said, address the wants, not the needs of the question. I just wanted to clarify that that's the way it was intended, because often somebody is asking a question when what they say doesn't align with why they might be asking that question. So I just wanted to clarify that that bullet actually meant wants, not needs, and not the other way around. Like somebody, let's say, has had a bad experience, but they ask a question about some philosophical point that is coming from, what's in their heart is different from what they're actually asking about.
Oh, okay. I think you're right. I think I switched the words.
Oh, okay, Prabhu.
Right,
Good.
right,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I think you're right. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing it out. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam. Thank you so much for taking us through this journey. I think it was very unique and experiential to receive this. Uh, I think you answered a lot of questions, Prabhuji, that were coming in our minds in your content itself. One thing that I wanted to know from your personal experience, Prabhuji, when you were starting to give classes back in the days versus now, like you said, it becomes your second nature. So can you share some glimpses of from your experience perspective then? Because probably few of us are at that stage. So it does get little uncomfortable, even though you say don't over prepare, but I think at this stage of our journey, it's good to kind of over prepare, rehearse, and then make sure, because as you said, it's a service, right? And you want to make sure that service goes very, very well. So something that you can share from your own experiences from your early preaching.
Thank you, Prabhu. Good question. So one thing that I did, you're right. Like earlier on, you're a little bit more nervous, and it's good to be nervous. Even, it's always good to be nervous. It keeps you prepared. But one big thing is that in 9 times out of 10, what's the right word? That your audience are rooting for you. They want you to succeed. It's your home crowd, regardless of whether it is literally your home crowd or not. Um, uh, Very, very rarely I've encountered a situation where in earlier days they used to call this stump the Swami. That there would people who would do the stump the Swami, that they would ask questions that would like throw the person off. Not so much, not so much now. Other than that, Prabhu, I think just maintaining this mood of presenting things as you have heard, experienced, or practiced, that gives you a fair bit of confidence, right? Like, if I sit on the Vyasthan and I say that you have to realize that you're the soul and not the body. It'll be difficult for me because I haven't realized that myself. But if I sit on the Vyasthan and say, Krishna says you're not the body but the soul, then I can say that with conviction. That comes through there. So the more we display integrity to the topic and ultimately to the audience, the more we stay in the safe zone. Right? We are not there to bedazzle the audience. We're just there to open the heart a little bit.
Right. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And as you said, it's your presentation, and if you are not perfect, it's okay. If it's not coming out perfect, because we should not be over endeavoring there also. But our intent should be to do it as best as we can.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Laddu Gopal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. Actually, this is really overwhelming for me. In terms of like, if I have to really present according to like what you have spoken, it's totally out of but what I see is like, a lot of it's based on the intent, what you spoke, and the purity of the person who is speaking. Like if you see like Radha Govind Maharaj lectures, you might have seen, right? A lot of it. Probably they're not like designed in this way, but the way the purity of a soul, like as a or Prabhupada's lecture even. So, but we are entering now into more intellectual people, right? So they are going to ask analytical questions, and that's the reason probably the way you presented, like it will appeal them more rather than it going directly into the bhava, where you want to speak about the rasas or anything.
Yeah.
The topics are more like corporate level, today's topic probably.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for this. Will really help. But it will take a time to really come to a stage where we can really, because you don't feel like qualified to speak this amount of it. Yeah. It'll take some practice and time.
Which is good and bad. I think it's good to feel that the service to speak is not something that you should take casually. So some amount of gravity there, it's good. But then at the same point, just knowing that the whole parampara is rooting for you. That what you're speaking is what was spoken by your Guru Maharaj and by Prabhupada and parampara. So you have, like Prabhupada on the Jalduta, right? He saw that he was sitting on the whole Gaudiya Vaishnava parampara was rowing the boat. Right? And then he was praying to them. So just that kind of mood that takes away the focus more from us and more on the mercy that we're getting. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Ishwarana?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for this class and this presentation. Prabhu, my question was that I've observed your writing now, with the play as well as what you're sending with the Bhagavad Gita snippets. And I've appreciated the fact that you're able to condense something or simplify something to appeal to all of us. So and I guess one of my takeaways from this seminar was also how systematic you are in your own approach to Krishna consciousness. So what tips would you give to someone, and has writing helped you in your journey, Prabhu, if you could speak to that?
So yes, writing. So like I'll share with you these summaries that I'm writing for the verses. And this was many years ago when emails were introduced, right? And then it was like it's a great opportunity to preach. So I started sending out verse by summary of Bhagavad Gita over emails, and over time the mailing list. So I started off with literally just friends and family in the temple. And after some time, the mailing list became like almost at 3,000 people in the mailing list that I was sending out to. So I'm taking that as the base. It takes me a lot longer to write a few lines as opposed to more lines, because you're always kind of agonizing over. But this is such an important point. It needs to be there, right? And then you're like, okay, it's almost like giving away your firstborn. That this is such an important point, but I need to get it to fit over there. So it does take a fair bit of effort to condense. And in my own preparation, I tend to first make a collection of all the points that I feel are relevant, and then I start removing the points. It's a good point, but I won't have the time to speak on that. Honestly speaking, 90% of 90% when I give a good class, 90% of it is because I was able to hear a good class. Right. So or I was able to so I'm a compulsive note taker. I have a document that is literally thousands of pages long. So I've been taking notes in it forever. I then loaded it up into ChatGPT. So I can ask ChatGPT questions and it answers me on the document there. But like I said, this habit of reviewing your own classes in retrospect and adding on that helps a lot in terms of subsequent classes. Also listening to people who give really good classes. If you listen to Radhika Raman, his classes are outstanding. Like, he builds this whole, I mean, he ticks all the boxes. When he speaks, then you know that you're listening to a very sincere person. And there are others. There are others that give fantastic classes. Laddu Gopal was mentioning Radha Govind Maharaj. He's one of my favorites. I've listened to his Gita Saptas several times over. He has this way of, what I call his casual perfection. That it looks like he's just, it just looks like he's sitting and talking, but you dissect his class, he puts in so much of philosophy in it, right? And the whole edutainment part of it there. So just by observing others and being more and being looking at it as something, like you became a doctor, you studied hard, you practiced, so you invested so much of energy before you became like a good doctor. So similarly, things like giving good presentations, classes, it's the same. There are some people who are probably born with it, but a lot of us. I haven't heard you speak. You're probably already an excellent speaker, but it always helps to look at it with give it the same regard as you would give to any other pursuit, like a scholarly pursuit.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sachijeevan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. Everyone already spoke about the guideline that you have put forward. As you rightly said, ultimately it's your class, so you have to prepare and whatever required. But the guideline was so helpful. And just a typical question that if you get an audience who is very quiet, I'll give a kind of a situation. There's a Jagannath temple nearby, and they invite me sometimes doing worshipping there, and also talk something about Bhagavad Gita or any topic. So first time I observed not many people, 10, 15 people, but nobody asked questions. Second time, same thing. And I asked the president, is it something that I'm doing wrong? People are not understanding. I don't get any reaction. I don't know whether I'm talking right things or people are taking away something or not. Should I continue or not? And the temple president said, don't worry. They are like this only. They come, they hear, they take prasad and go home. So I'm just wondering in this kind of situation, what differently we can do?
Good question. So one thing about human psychology is that everybody likes to be heard. That it basically deals with their basic, just the desire. Everybody likes to be heard. We just need to create an environment that is conducive there, right? So if the audience is shy or diffident, then you can make it inclusive by saying, what do you think about it? Like, ask a question that is not necessarily shastrically very difficult, but maybe even a rhetorical question that what do you think about the importance of making spiritual progress? Or aren't the deities beautiful? What do you think? Right. So something that is, that is very much in the safety zone. And generally there'll be one or two brave souls, they will start talking, and then it'll kind of open it up. So an audience that is not responsive is not necessarily a bad thing, but an audience that is participative is definitely a better thing. So if they're sitting there, they're hearing you, they're absorbing, that's good. But if they were asking you and offering opinions, that's better. So it's on you to create that environment, right? And sometimes, and this is not so much in devotee circle, but sometimes when the professional speakers come in, they'll start with something like, "How's everybody doing? Isn't this a great day? And boy, did you look at the traffic in the Beltway?" Right? So this is the art of like so this is called the art of selling a car. That you go to a car dealer, and the person will ask you questions that have only one answer. Yes. Have you come to buy a car? Would you like to get a good deal? Would you like to get a good car? And you say yes, yes, yes. And by the time he has gone to his 10th, 15th question, he's trained you to say yes to him. Right. So then when he actually gets to the more difficult questions, then you're trained to say yes, right? Now we generally don't want to manipulate the audience like that, but we can use some version of it. Isn't Krishna sweet? Isn't it great to be here rather than being stuck over there? Something, people say yes, yes, yes. And then, the culture of yes is that subconsciously they say that we are friends. That this person and I, we agree to so many things, we are friends. So that's an environment that establishes a safe zone for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Adigun Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much, first of all, for covering this. This was very helpful, is very helpful. I wish we had this when you had given us this service a couple of years ago, but nevertheless, we had your empowerment. So, Prabhuji, I was thinking about 3 scenarios and just wanted to hear from you, like how, in your experience, were you best able to tackle them and what can we do? First of all, if there are seniors in the audience in age and they are not, they have their own philosophy of life for the topic that you're given to present, and they authoritatively say something to the whole audience, and it is not in line with Krishna consciousness. What do we do? Because we don't want to shoot them down and drain the whole energy down, because I'm way younger than that person. How do we do that?
It's a good question. One way of handling it is by not giving it a lot of weight. Right. So somebody senior to you says that Bhagavad Gita is all about doing your karma. Right. And you say, I agree with you. It's all about doing karma, and there are other things also that are spoken over there. Right? So if you go head on with him and say that, well, it's just karma, after that gyan comes, and then bhakti comes, and then you're actually speaking out of context, you're obviously not at the Bhagavad Gita completely. It's the person, you've lost the person who's speaking. Most importantly, you've lost the audience. Right? Because they're essentially evaluating, not so much, they're evaluating you with how you're handling that person. Right? So that's what they're evaluating on. So it's like, Satyam Bruham, Priyam Bruham, that if you can speak it in a palatable way, then speak it. Otherwise, you can deflect it. Right? You can say this is a good point, but there are many other points. And one technique that I use, it's a bit of cop-out. One of the technique I use is that I would love to discuss this more with you in a more one-on-one session. Right, 9 times out of 10, the person will never come to you. But at least from the audience perspective, you're indicating that you're serious. You've taken the person's question seriously. You've taken seriously the need to answer, and you would like to spend time with that, right? Because sometimes people, they create the situation really to get the spotlight on themselves. Right? So the more you feed into that, the more you're. And in the Bhakti Vriksha, I had that instance. You've been around, right? There have been times when people who are a lot older than me have spoken different things, and I mean that's a technique that I use. That I said that it's a good point you make. Why don't we talk about it over prasadam, right? And I've never seen the person come to me and speak over prasadam, right? So, but at least the audience is rooting for you.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you. My second was like very close to that question, like person who, like, say if I'm speaking on bereavement and grief, and obviously we all experience that in many degrees, but that person has like experienced that in much more quantity more recently, and something has really worked for them, may not be in line with Krishna consciousness. Do we do the same with them?
So that's a little sensitive, right? If the person is dealing with grief, if you keep aside, if you take a step back, and how would you deal with a person who is grieving? You know, your primary instinct is to console the person. Right. So if you keep aside that this person may be speaking a deviant philosophy or maybe disagreeing with you, if you keep that aside, the main emotion that you would like to present genuinely is that of wanting to assuage the sorrow and the fear in the person, any pain that is there. So if the person is using the grief to challenge you, then you should not focus on the challenge but the grief. But I can understand that this is a difficult time for you, and I can understand how this can make one question this, that, right? And it's something that I hope, I pray that you come out of it quickly. That should be the focus. Not so much on if he says that, where is Krishna now? He caused me this. I don't believe in God. He caused me this, right? So instead of focusing on that part, that where is God, and and then you start saying, well, you probably did sinful activities, so you got it coming for you, right? The law of karma needs to act upon you. That's not what is that person needs. Nobody needs that other thing. If the person is hurting, you need to address the hurt. That's the main thing. Yeah.
And lastly, Prabhuji, if there are senior devotees in the audience during Q&A, do we offer them to speak first, or we just go ahead and start speaking?
That's a very good question. So it depends on the difference of seniority between you and the person, right? So you're giving a class, and Rampad Swami is sitting in the audience, right? You defer the question to him 100% of the time. That's the etiquette that I would like to see, what Maharaj, what you would like to do. We actually had this situation where Maharaj was sitting in the audience, and it wasn't a disciple, but one who was at the status of his disciple. A disciple of his godbrother was giving a class, and he was also answering the questions, etc. And the Maharaj later on told me that it's okay, it was okay what he did, but just tell him that Vaishnava etiquette is that if there's a senior devotee sitting in the class, you should defer the questions to him. Now, that was the distinction between, like, Maharaj is the type of a special master and he's a level disciple. But other than that, like if you're giving a class and I'm sitting, then then that difference is not that much. So there's no need to defer to me, right? Then I would also like you to answer the question there. And so, whereas if there's a sannyasi that is sitting or a proper disciple that is sitting, then I would like you to defer to because anytime that you give a class, there will always be people who are more senior to you, especially if you're in a temple setting. There'll always be people who are more senior to you sitting in the class. They're also sitting there to listen to you. And more specifically, they're sitting there to see what is it that you have gathered from your predecessors, from what you have heard from Prabhupada, what you have heard from others. Like Prabhupada would love to hear his own books, right? He would sit and have his disciples read his own books. So, similarly in the same mood, the disciples like that. So they're sitting there to hear you speak, to hear you answer. You should do that service to them. But if there's a question that you can't answer, you can defer it to them. If there's a question that is becoming more of a, if you're opening up a question for discussion, then you can give them preference that I would really like to see what you think about it before I hear from other people. So some kind of acknowledging their seniority. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Prabhu, I raised a hand and I lowered it. Actually, I had a question which you answered at the end. So if you are giving a talk, so it's your topic, your thought. So if the questions come, isn't it ideally you should respond? And if you then later on you refer that if there is anything to add or something, because you are talking on the subject and the question would be related to that.
Yes, it's a good point. It's your class, right? It's your class, it's your material, your topic. Even though you have taken it from others, it's the context is that it's yours. So you take the first crack at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Like I said, other than situation where there is a really senior devotee in the crowd, then yes,
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, we'll end here. Tomorrow we'll do our practice classes. I think we spoke about it yesterday. Any questions about it?
So, Prabhuji, there are 8 of us, and each one of us is going to go for 15 minutes. So, are we planning to do all 8 of us tomorrow?
So how much does it work out to be? 15 times 8, 80 and 40, 160. So that's a little over 2 hours.
I'm selfishly asking because if we are not, then I could not go for tomorrow.
Not go for tomorrow. Okay, I'm open to suggestions. Do you want to break it up into two? So here's what I'm thinking, that 15 minutes is a 10-minute class, 15-minute Q&A. After that, some time for people to give feedback. Like let's assume Adigo, when you speak, and then everybody else gives 2 things that you could have done better and 1 thing that you did well, right? And that kind of finishes the thing off. So actually, it's probably more like 20 minutes per person. And I think you're right, 8 people, so it's a bit, it may stretch the day a bit long. It's a working day. We could split it over 2 days. How would you like to do it? You want to do it like Monday, Tuesday, or split it by a week? How would you like to do?
We can do Monday, Tuesday, like 4 each, like 4 on Monday, 4 on Tuesday, something like that.
For Monday, okay.
So that will have sufficient time, like
Okay.
now.
Okay. Is everybody okay with it?
Prabhuji, just one question. How much time do we have, in the sense, I was thinking it's a working day, both tomorrow and day after office. Is there an opportunity to do this a little longer session, let's say on a Sunday, and we can do all in one go in the afternoon? Is that a possibility?
That's a possibility too. Giving a class closer to the seminar, it keeps it. Now you get a chance to, it's still fresh in your mind. It kind of helps a little. It helps a little bit. That was my thought process. But like I said, I'm okay either way. If you wanted to do the whole thing next Sunday, then Actually, maybe the whole thing may be a bit too long, Prabhu. I'm just thinking that a little over 2 hours. Maybe we may have a little bit of lecture fatigue there.
Mm.
So maybe we can break it up into two and do one session Monday. Next session, like Laddu Gopal is saying, we could do it Tuesday, but if somebody has a different idea, I'm flexible.
Let's see who is ready for tomorrow, like Adi Govinda was also saying. So, do we have 3 or 4 folks who are ready for tomorrow?
We can both do it tomorrow, I think, Prabhu. Yeah. At least the two of us can do it. I don't know if there are 2 more available.
I had asked for coverage for tomorrow, Prabhu, so it'll be difficult for me to. I'm on call tomorrow night, and I had already asked for coverage, so I would also prefer to go tomorrow if possible.
2 people tomorrow. Is Priyanka Mataji doing tomorrow?
Prabhu, I don't know. I mean, I am not fully prepared. I will never fully be prepared, but I could try, I guess. I had a question quickly about the presentation, Prabhu. So, are we going to recite the prayers and everything?
No, we are not.
So, we just start off with the class, right?
Yeah, so before we start the whole class, we'll do the Mangalacharan.
Okay.
And we'll just assume that it's for all the classes. But the class will essentially be just 10 minutes of speaking. If you want to use PowerPoint, that's fine also. But my focus was mostly on speaking. After that, allow for 5 minutes of question, 5 minutes for feedback.
Okay. So 10 minutes is what we get to speak, right, Prabhu?
10 minutes for speak.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will go tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah, I can go tomorrow too. So we are 4 here.
Okay. So we have 4 for tomorrow, meeting at 7 p.m. Okay. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpatarubhyashcha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaः. Anant Koti Vaishnavind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Guru Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.